get it for. So that's interesting. Though yeah, I don't see the. I'm trying to look. Though I don't think I'm the what's it called, the admin of this call. So I don't think I'd have the option anyway. But
Okay.
yeah, usually there's just like a little plus sign, and then you can invite people, and then they get an
Yeah.
email, and then even if they don't have a Google account, it's supposed to send them an email. So I don't know. That's interesting.
Well, I could do that from Gmail. So I opened up another window in
Mm.
Chrome, went to my Gmail account, and in Hangouts then I looked at this call, and then I could look at the people, and then I could add somebody else. At least there was a plus sign there.
Well, Jed and Venerable, would you guys want to just kind of introduce yourselves? You know, I mean, because I know Jed, he's been doing some amazing work for us.
Oh, thank you.
You two guys have both, you know, it's not, I've had a lot of interest from people to help out, and they bug me and bug me and bug me, and then I end up asking them to come on, right? And for the most part, you know, I haven't seen any results that the same people have given in return. So I'm appreciative when people actually help out, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to
So
organize
what do you do,
people.
Jet?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So I I got introduced to ACI through the Mahazuka Center in LA.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and then so my teacher is Lama Marut's student, Lama Mira. And so, you know, it's interesting. My motive for doing ACIP is a little selfish because I saw Geshe-la one time when he came to LA, and I was talking to him about this program at UCSB I'm entering, which is a Buddhist studies program. It's a PhD study in Buddhist studies at UCSB, and he was like, "Oh, you know, if you really want to have the karma to do well in a program like that, you should get involved with ACIP."
Uh-huh.
So it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds smart. So then I kind of dropped the lead, but then Salvador, who lives in Phoenix, who's also part of our Kula, got in touch with Adam, and he was like, hey, you know, I thought you might be interested in this, and I was like, yes, definitely. So
Very
so
good.
yeah, so that's kind of my so it's great, you know, it's a great training ground for my Tibetan, and also to feel like I'm, you know, doing some immediate contribution to the field rather than just going to school for 8 years and learning a ton before I'm actually helping out. So
Nice.
that's kind of my background.
Cool. I've been trying to do hypercontexting for, gosh, I don't know, maybe 14 years.
Mm.
This is when I first got introduced to it, when I went to go see Geshe-la give a teaching at the first Great Retreat.
Huh.
And Ted Lemon was working the project then, and I got introduced to it, and they said, oh, you don't need to know Tibetan at all. And back then, we were just doing it with, you know, a text editor. There was no program or anything like that. And, oh my gosh, not knowing Tibetan, it was just sort of ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
Every single thing you have to look up, and is it a full word or not? And, oh.
Yeah.
So it's much nicer now with Aaron Cram's tool. It's really easy.
Well, I don't know how much more. I mean, it's 15 minutes in now.
Oh yeah.
And I sent out the invitation 2 different ways. So, you know, I had a few people. Like Dr. Stump said he wasn't going to be able to make it, and Venerable Cotting said she wasn't going to be able to make it either. So, you know, it's being recorded, and if anybody else wants to review it, they can. But
yeah,
rather than waste any more time, you know, it's basically I just wanted today to function as a brainstorming kind of, you know, session, in the sense that we've got a few different ways that we can outline the data itself. The last time I was with Holy Geshe Michael, he mentioned instead of just sending a strictly digital packet of information, that we get one printed, and you know, in whatever way, so that it's a little bit more presentable, and we'll send Sonam and the other executives that are over this project at Google a hard copy of this as well, along with maybe a thumb drive and all the files that go along with it. So in the meeting, they were expressing a heavy interest in having our data presented in script form. So actually having Uchin-like presentation. And they weren't necessarily concerned with the Roman, the ACIP Wiley that we've got everything in. So rather than like just send them the Tibetan script, I thought it would be helpful if, and this is where I'm needing some input from you guys, is, conceptually, picture a book, right? And then think of how are we going to outline the stuff, and what's going to be the best presentation here. I want to keep it under like 30 pages.
Sure.
But in the grand scheme of things, like, do we even include the Roman if they're not interested in it? And my argument is, and then I'll try to get a retort from each of you, is, this is what we've got all our data in. So if we can sync the hook with the sample data, and they start to want to pull more information from us, and we start developing a deeper relationship with them, all of our information's in ACIP Wiley, so it's going to be a task to run everything through the conversion tools that we have. And so I'm kind of the mindset that we include both, the Roman as well as the Tibetan. But that's kind of what, they're not interested in it,
Well, definitely you should give them what they're interested in, for sure. And I don't think it would hurt to also give them the Roman. It's not going to take up much more space.
Exactly.
Can I just kind of wonder, so is this is sample data of just Tibetan script and the English translation side by side, or is this the hypertext data? Like what is the hard copy? What is the actual layout, I guess?
Yeah, that's the next question.
Or are you asking, Jed, about what's included in the package? Like, is it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what we're trying to establish right now.
Oh.
Because my feeling is we've got the PDFs. Mm-hmm. Like I sent out that invitation to the Google Drive folder that I made. Mm. And within that, I got the PDF version of the King of the Dharma, and I extracted just the pages of the data that we're working with. It's just 3 pages, So we've got the PDF, right? We've got color, like photos. It's all laid out nicely, like Rob did for it. So I'm thinking putting that in there too, so that they see where it's from. And now here's the question that I had about the content was, is it helpful to simply have the first page be the non-hyper-contexted version? That you would have the script, and then you would have the English, and then another block of scripts, and then another block of English translation, and then have a separate document, I guess, within that book, that would be the hyper-contexted version, where they could look at it and say, oh, okay, well, this is the original, and this here is the data that they began to work with in its original form, and then here's the data after they've, quote, hypertexted it,
So if you do that in hard copy, are you just saying they'd get the data just with the tags and everything for the hyper context data?
Yeah, and that's another question. You're like Shari Putra on this one, man. You're like asking the questions as I'm wanting to get to them.
Good.
So that's another thing. Like, do we put a copy of Cram's program in with the data? And do we address the conceptual nature of what hypercontexting is, and you know, do we write like a brief abstract as far as like how, you know, this data is applicable, like because only one there was four, I think there were 5 people in the meeting, and only one person from Google's side understood conceptually what we were talking about as far as hypercontexting goes, you know. So,
yeah, you know, it's interesting. Are they asking for a hard copy? Because it seems like having a hard copy of the hypercontext data is only going to confuse them a little bit. It's kind of like giving somebody raw HTML and asking them to picture a web page.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
But they can't look at the electronic data without having hypercontext.
Without having the program, which then we run into the problem of, you know, this from a system independent side. I have no idea what they're going to be trying to run it on, you know. And so if they're running it on a Linux box, or if they're running it on, like, you know, a PC, there's no way to tell if the application is even going to load for them.
Right.
Such mixed results from everybody.
How important is understanding the process to Google, or are they interested only in results?
They're interested in the results. They are. They're interested in the glossary. They basically want a Tibetan, like, script English equivalent glossary.
Okay.
You know? And anything else that we give them over that, we're just trying to make it easier to work with us in the future. You know, we want to let them know that we're thorough and that they've got different ways to, because Sunam, she's the only Tibetan that works for Google. And she has been spearheading, like, this project personally. She's been pushing all these different directions to get this, like, accomplished.
That's great.
Yeah, and I found this thing that she had tried to organize. Google last year was willing to pay a couple of native-speaking Tibetans to translate basically anything, newspapers, magazines, whatever it may be. They were going to pay them to sit in their house and just translate. You see? But I don't think anything ever came to fruition. So I kind of say that just as an anecdote to the fact that we've got somebody in Google that wants this to happen, you know. So I'm just trying to make it easier for her, and I want to let her know that she's got, you know, an organization outside of Google that's, like, willing to work to make this happen, you know.
You know, I was thinking, what if we, for the platform issue, we don't necessarily have to give them a hypertext document and have it run on the platform. We could even just build, like, a JavaScript thing with rollovers just to simulate how it works, you know. And then that way, you know, just have the rollover highlights work, and then give them the source tags, and then they'll get it. I don't even know if you could put JavaScript in a PDF. You know, there may be a way to integrate the script into. And I've actually got a small script that would work to do that. So yeah, that's something to explore. Yeah, because then we could just simulate it. So then they have the tags, and then you're like, and this is what it does. It's like, you know, and then they see that if you roll over the English word, you see the Tibetan equivalent.
Yeah, and it would be just a simple highlighting function in that sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
No installation issues, no work on their part. They just have to look at the document and run their cursor around.
Right.
Okay. Well, maybe, you know, that's kind of the way that I've been going about trying to make it easier for them is actually, it would just do quite the opposite, you know, and then in this sense, like, simplicity would be the easiest manner to proceed, you know. instead of trying to include everything so that, you know, I know they've got everything. So does the transliteration that's in the glossary stay?
I would say yes. Keep the transliteration in there. And the script. Because there's a difference between, well, I don't know. No, it doesn't matter. They see the script. It's okay. Well, just to sort of get them used to ACIP Wiley.
Yeah, so you can kind of see why I was setting that carrot out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that the thing that the Wiley has that the script doesn't is that might be relevant for them is the parsing of words.
Right.
They might, you know, because they might not, I mean, unless this is coming from Sonam, they might not understand that, like, well, why do we need something additional if we have the script? That's fine, but if they're not, they're going to have no way to know where things start and end with just script, unless you have the Wiley in there, and then you can see kind of a unit-to-unit matching. Though, if we're simulating with this highlighting thing, if we're simulating how words match up, that might take the role of including the script, Wiley script. It seems like to me that would be the reason to include the script, is to show where words start and end. I think that's the only extra function it really adds.
So then you wouldn't need the column that has the tag numbers. That wouldn't be important. Would it?
No, I don't think so.
Right.
I think, you know, what I'll run into, it's like there's a couple of points in the text itself where like the geche has it relates to multiple words, and
a lot of words, yeah.
Yeah, and there's I can see that actually being a something that I'm going to have to work out within the script itself to get it to function properly. So, I mean, I'll be quite honest. I mean, I don't want to just push this out to get it done, because obviously it's never going to be done. You know, I mean, if everything goes well, we'll be working with them into the foreseeable future. You know, but mainly I just want to get this. I want to get something to them. You know, ASAP. Because I've already gotten a couple of emails from them.
Oh.
A few months ago, actually. You know. But it seems like it's taken this much time, and this leads into my next kind of like question for you guys. It's like it's taken this much time to get where we are now, you know. So let's say they get the data. A week later, we get an email asking for some, you know, some more stuff, right? What do we have to go? I don't have, you know, I'm not comfortable sending them anything that I got from the DM days, because a lot of it hasn't been, there's been no process of quality control with it. And there's a lot of half hypertexted stuff. And so as far as I know, this is the only presentable data that we have.
And even this has some questions in it. Like, has Geshe-la looked at this work?
No, he hasn't looked at this again. No. It's the 3 to 4 hours that I spent with him personally, we dedicated just to this, you know. So from everything that I took from the videos, this should be as a direct like representation of his like his translation. So it's as close as we're going to get. Now there are some finer details, such as do we start to tweak things? Like I noticed one of the notes was you know, Je Rinpoche, you know, and this usually refers to Je Tsongkhapa, and you know, do we put notes like that in there? And because you know, Rinpoche is a very, I hesitate to use the word generic term, but because it's a very holy like title, but at the same time, you know, it's so there are some questions. There's some ambiguity that still exists, and I'll I'll give you my opinion, and that is that if Geshe Michael didn't address it as I was sitting with him, I'm very hesitant to touch anything that he didn't specifically address. And that's just because knowing he's omniscient, he could be trying to teach me multiple things, you know. So he could be getting me to check for more errors. He could be urging me to do deeper workings with the text. But also, it's super important that that we don't touch anything. From my standpoint, I'll speak for myself, that I don't want to touch anything because if everything goes well, this is going to be used within their language models, you know. So if we start putting stuff in there that Geshe Michael didn't explicitly put in his translation, you know, he left J Rinpoche in King of the Dharma because he felt that a modern society, anybody who would be reading that text would know who that was, you know. But there was no note on it or anything. So the next question comes up, it's like, well, this isn't going to be for a Dharma-savvy audience, in the sense that this is meant for anybody who wants to speak in Argentina or Morocco or Japan and talk to somebody into, you know, in India or in the homeland, you know, in Tibet, that they'd be able to do it. So
I think it's a pretty straightforward question to ask, Geshe-la. You know, there was another example in there of Jason Kappa's disciples or something like that, and the Tibetan word is for disciples, not Jason Kappa's disciples.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we, even though he said in a teaching, oh, this means Jason Kappa's disciples, that's not what he meant, right? He meant it means disciples. And he was adding the part of Jason Kappa's disciples. Right?
Let me bring that up. No, this is interesting, and this is specifically the type of stuff that I wanted to address. So let me pull up the glossary real quick.
But an example would be of, say, the what is it, Rajang Yeshe dictionary, where they have a word, they define it, but then there may also be something like, you know, this is an abbreviation for this word.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be annotations to a lot of Holy Geshe Michael's translations, because if I remember correctly, the specific term that we're talking about was
Yesu.
Yeah, Yesu, meaning on his right. Now, this was a very interesting term, and I spent a lot of time with it because of the ordering of the words and the. So even Yesu, right? On the left and the right of the Tibetan for Yesu,
right.
There were translations which could directly influence who you're talking about in the painting. You see. So, given the proximity of the other words, that's why he went with that. And let me just get to it.
Oh, I see. So there's no confusion that it's, you know, it's not Gyaltsabje's right.
No, it's Jetson Kappa's on right.
Right.
And specifically, he chose Jetson Kappa because of the Su. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This I think that a lot of this gets into. You know, I don't even know. I mean, if Geshe-la said that, then of course that's what it is. But I also, from my understanding, a lot of this stuff is just, it has to do with convention. You know what I mean? Like, when you're saying left and right, it's assumed in that context. It's from the central figure's perspective. You know, and that's just context. So in English, we don't have that assumption. So we have to specify it. But even for Tibetans, I know a lot of this stuff is ambiguous. You know, it's not latent somewhere in the original text. It's like you can only know it from additional explanation. So this kind of gets into a kind of, like I know Geshe Michael had this great translation of in one of the Lojongs of packed dried meat, and he translated it as don't tarry, leave now, because why? Because in Tibet, when you're going on a long journey and you don't know and you have to leave quickly, you pack dried meat, right? So it's like, so this gets into, I don't know what Google's now, is it going to be appropriate for Google's stuff to try to translate those idiomatic phrases like that? Like, I don't know. So it depends on what's the scope of our translation.
No, thank you. Like, you're stepping into my world now. Like, I've been sitting with these questions, and I have no idea. I really have no idea. Because I can see arguments for both.
Yeah.
Well, you can address that by having, the glossary entry, or the English equivalent, be, literal translation, packed dried meat, commonly understood to mean, do not tarry.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's an advantage of Tibetan too, because I think everything's nested, right? So you can do a literal translation word for word and enter that in, and then you can translate an entire phrase, and maybe
sure.
I think it's to what degree do you want to, it's kind of like the more words you want to translate as one idiomatic phrase, that's the kind of the more depth of translation you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you guys both know from listening and hearing the way that Geshe Michael talks about like one-to-one translators. That I think we're going to have. It may be appropriate to have the glossary as we have it now, but maybe include another column for a one-to-one, representation of each word.
I think so. I think the problem, because this is also the limitation we're working with Google. You know what I mean? Because if they're trying to do, their algorithms are going to be a one-to-one thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is going to be limited. But that's what it is. We got to give them the type of information that their system is going to work with. If we delve too much into complicated meaning, it's going to be useless information to them.
But they can build into their program, don't you think, when a phrase shows up, an idiomatic phrase, right?
Yeah, but the thing with the left and the right, I think, is going to be lost on them, because it's not going to be able to detect when there's a central figure whose perspective is it looking from. It's going to be able to only say. So I think that's where we just kind of have to, there's things that a good translator will do from context that are not just latent in the text itself. But those are things that I don't think we can really try to port over for Google, because, because computers are not minds yet. You know what I mean? I mean, they're doing algorithms.
It's interesting, though. I have to, if we could. Like, let's say we could pull up a website that had a listing of every single language that Google has already done this with. I'm sure there's over 50, maybe close to 100. They've like, that department and the entity, which is Google, is so incredibly like efficient, in developing all these different things.
Sure. That
I have to expect their language models are the best in the world. Like, I mean, how so. I think the only reason I say that is I think we should give Google more. I think I should give Google more credit than I have been wanting to give them. In that sense, and that they've done this with a lot of different languages, and so they're
But I mean, honestly though, it's still pretty bad. I mean, I just mean in comparison to somebody who really knows the language and can translate.
And knows the teaching. That's another thing too.
I was looking at Russian, like, generated through Google today, like translated by Google, and there's definitely still like rough spots,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even. I mean, I think you're being generous to be off. It's almost unintelligible.
Really?
I think so. I mean, it's just because it's an algorithm. You know what I mean? But maybe this is something we need to ask Google more about, and I think they'd be forthcoming. I don't think they're gonna be like, I don't think they're going to have pretense about where they're at, but I think that's going to give kind of an understanding of like, well, what is it appropriate to delve into them, and what is just beyond the scope of what they're, where the technology is at.
So maybe that'll be my first step. Maybe I write them back, and I let them know where we're at, that we've got something we want to send, but that we also would like a little bit more information regarding, what's going to be best for them. Like, how do you guys want it?
Yeah, that's a very important question.
Yeah.
And to put it that way too, we want to make sure that what we give you is going to best serve you.
Yeah. I had another question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering too, just about, because if their intention is for people to be able to use these tools to translate kind of everyday material, I mean, Dharma language is just so different and has such a different vocabulary than like the newspaper. I mean, like, my understanding even is like, some of the best translators, you can pick up a Tibetan newspaper and have no idea what's going on, because they have a whole new vocabulary for dealing with kind of like modern political climates and all this other stuff. I wonder, if for what they're trying to do, are Dharma texts going to be the thing that's going to really help them?
Well, Venerable Apala, I mean, you helped out a lot with organizing that first set of texts. You're kind of the main person that did that, so maybe you can shed a little light on that.
Well, I mean, it's a question I had in my mind too, but Geshe it seemed to be very keen about getting in there, and because remember that, well, at least the written language is, sole purpose was to transmit the Dharma. So there's definitely a strong connection between Tibetan and Dharma, the language and Dharma.
Okay,
well, how that goes into colloquial Tibetan, I don't know. I haven't studied that.
Right. Now,
but he seems to, I mean, he's been saying, we got to get in there with this stuff.
Yeah,
and that the Lam Rim was the most, I don't know what the right word would be, general?
Yeah, because I don't even know if you can. It's like Dura. Like when you start talking debate or dialectic, Tibetan, like, it is such a blending of the two. And I think Namdra Lakchang comes off that same way, in the sense that Pabanka Rinpoche was teaching from a very colloquial aspect. But there was also like all these like different phrases and stories and that he was from a very classical like literary sense was like intermingling the two. So we thought, and that's just to give you a little heads up, Jed, as far as this is something we've been thinking about, we've been considering like from the beginning, because that was the first main issue, was like, what, we've got like 20 to 25,000 pages of text, but at the same time we don't have that much that's can speak to the modern kind of like colloquial literary.
Yeah.
All that stuff is buried within the commentaries that Geshe has given as he taught. And that sort of, I don't know, underscores the importance of the transcription project to get those things transcribed so that we can use them for projects like this with Google and other translation projects.
So I have to wonder, and I'll tell you guys this just from a more personal like thing. From day one, I've been talking with Venerable Ningpo to get his input and to ask for help and guidance in certain places. He's got a friend in Google, right? And his friend relayed to him that what they're going to need is, upwards of like 100 gigs of information, which is nowhere near the amount of stuff we have. Like, he was kind of saying that, for the Spanish like module, like they had, so much, or like for Japanese or whatever, But so Ningpo's feeling is that they're going to need more data than we have. Which led me to think about that okay, that point, right?
Mm.
Coupled with the fact that a majority of our stuff is it's classical, so it may have no application, you know. So those 2 points together are enough to warrant like dropping the project, to be quite honest, with Google. But I have to wonder like what it is that Geshe knows. What is it that he can see, or if this is some sort of like preliminary practice for me to do purification with, or like what, you know? I just have to do what my Holy Lama has asked me to do, you know,
Right.
to the best
Right.
of my ability.
And you can bring up these issues with him. He's not, you know, averse to hearing that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, Geshe, what about, you know, they typically need X amount of data in order to run their algorithm and get a reliable result. That's even as bad as we said it was before. But you know, so how can we meet that, right?
You know,
This
just
is
an
just a little
idea on the
taste.
front. Do you know Radio Free Asia?
Yeah.
I mean, they have a ton of stuff in Tibetan and English. That's probably, I think they have articles that are already translated.
Holy, oh, great! That's a great catch, man. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because then, I mean, and then you can get the colloquial tip as well. I mean, maybe we can
Let's-
span 2 genres.
You know what? What we should do, we should probably think about writing RFA and asking them if it would be okay to use their translations for this project.
Yeah, I think that'd be really good.
And we can hypertext those along with the stuff that, you know, our sample data and anything else they ask for. You know, we could go through and hypertext anything that we pull off their site.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be in their interest.
Oh, I see. Right.
And they're
it's-
generating material all the time.
Yeah, it's modern. Wow, that's a great. See, this is what I think. This is what I was looking for, in the sense that sometimes you need to bring in more minds, right?
Oh, yeah.
You kind of find some stuff because I have the ability to get very single-pointed and like hyper-focused on one particular like tract. So sometimes I need some ideas, you know, out of left field, and I think that's great, man. That's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would, I don't want to say kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's not very Buddhist, but it'll help us
We
get-
need a new phrase, don't we?
Yeah, I know, we really do. It'll accomplish multiple aims.
It would
You
bring
know,
2 birds to bliss.
yes,
Um,
that's better alliteration too. I like
Multiple
that.
butterflies with one flower.
Yeah.
all right.
Attract multiple butterflies with 1 flower. That's good.
All right. Well, okay. So from a logical kind of like, I want to be able to generate something out of this call a little bit more than just brainstorming, in the sense that I think we need to come up with a couple of initial steps here. You know, so the first one being simply write Google, let them know that we've got data data ready to send to them, and we've got it in multiple formats. But also just trying to suss from them how we should send it and how they need it, and you know. So second one being looking into the RFA, this full endeavor, because they've got tons of stuff. You're not kidding. I mean, every day they're posting new stuff. But I mean, those are two steps right there. I think that would take a little time. I think at least over the next.
It'd be good just to get clear with Google too about how much information they would need. Because 100 gig, I mean, that's not annoying to me. I mean, you have the entire ACIP library on, it's a gig. I mean, and that's so much information. I mean, that would be. I don't know if you could fit the entire amount. I mean, I think the entire amount of stuff written in Tibetan might not be 100 gigs. So it's like.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's why I have to wonder, like, what it is. I didn't ask for clarification from Ningpo.
Yeah.
I just kind of like heard that, and then You know, so, but it was my feelings as well. Like, well, I mean, if you're talking terabyte of data in like Spanish, like, Project Gutenberg, for Christ's sakes, can fit on a single layer DVD, you know?
Okay. What was Project Gutenberg? I don't know about that.
Gutenberg was a project that I'm not sure what organizations were heading the whole thing, but this is back in maybe the 80s to the 90s.
I think it started in the 70s.
The 70s, okay. Well, you know, so for about 40 years now, they've been organizing a collection of all this literature from pretty much comprising the entire English language, like anything that's written, like any classic, and they were just compiling it into this like catalog form where you could download it as a single file, like a single compressed file from their website for a while. So you know, and I know I could get that entire thing onto one DVD because I did.
Yeah. So yeah, we got to be I think it'd be good to get clear about how much information they seem them.
That's true. I kind of just took what Venerable Ningpo was saying to be the case. So
yeah, it might be 100 gigs in some other format, and who knows? It might be, you know, there might be some thing that they're doing with the data that's, I don't know. I mean, who knows?
Okay.
Do you know what form what file format they need it in? Like, do they want a CSV or a?
I don't. And that's kind of where the whole point within the point within the agenda where I wanted to note, like, what structure do they need it? You know, what format here? Do we include it all as a single file? We can include like, multiple files. Do we have a TXT version, a doc, a PDF, and a CSV? You know, like, do we approach it from the aspect that like more is better in the sense that, you know, they've got a single thumb drive and you know, would need the text and the doc and the PDF, and you know, it kind of you can bring 4 birds to enlightenment with one stone, I think. But here's a question, man. Before I forget, like, the HyperContext tool that we have now, it only the dictionaries are only pulling information from like Ives Waldo, James Bowlby, Rangjung Yeshe, from the accepted like big, you know, powerhouse dictionaries, right? So I think we're going to run into obstacles regarding using that with anything we pull off the RFA website.
Yeah.
The dictionary function isn't going to work anymore. But I think something we could look into is I've got a okay. Now this is something Geshe-la and I talked about, and he put me on this project to get Goldstein's dictionary, the Goldstein-Narki dictionary. If you guys know the big one, that huge one, Jesus. It's a great dictionary. Well, so, oh, you've got it.
No, my teacher in my immersion program just recommended it to me, actually. I think yeah, it's one of the best colloquial dictionaries there is, I think.
Okay.
Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah.
So we were broaching the idea initially with getting that book input
this one.
into ACIP. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
So Narki, Geshe-la knows Narki, or knew Narki. Apparently he had done some study with him at some point when he was in Dharamsala. And he was very, he spoke very highly of Narki. His feeling was that we should find some way to use the Goldstein dictionary, the Goldstein-Narki dictionary. So he had me go through and pull off images. Like, he wanted me to scan the whole thing first, you know. And I was like, well, I've got a digital version of it, you know. So I got my digital version, I got my PDF, and I just broke every page into a single page.
That's great.
That file, right? And from what I understand, this was like 3 to 4 months ago, maybe even 5 months ago now, where he was planning on sending that to the centers in India, Karula or one of the Sarah input centers, and he was going to have it input, and they were going to push it up the queue so that we could get it, like we could get the Goldstein dictionary like entered in, preserved, but also have a version that we could work with, right?
Right. Yeah, that'd be great.
If that entered in, we could start hypertexting the entire freaking like Goldstein dictionary.
Yeah.
And if we had that done, that would be and I think this is projecting out maybe over the next 6 months, trying to get something like that taken care of. But if we get it all hypertexted, or not even hypertexted, like
just digitized.
If we just had the ACT files from the data centers of Goldstein's dictionary, I could work on integrating that into the dictionary tool, into Cram's HyperContext. You see, and then I think we could work with RFA's material a little better. And the only reason that I'm thinking that may be the route we have to go is because there are only a few people working with us right now. I mean, we've got like 15 volunteers so far, people that will work if I give them work, so we've got a handful of people. However, there are a lot of people who I hesitate to speak for the fact that they could churn out work quickly, especially if we're using text editors. So let's say we get everything done and we're going to start hypertexting everything. If we don't have it integrated into the tool, that's going to greatly inhibit the amount of data that we can give Google. We just get a page here and a page there.
I was wondering if this might be a programming nightmare, but if there's any way when people do translations for it to remember the associations that you make and have that feedback into the dictionary.
That's totally doable. And over the past few days, I've been making a list of functionality that I want to incorporate into a new program. So I'm just kind of fed up with asking Venerable Phil, and Aaron Cram. They're both very busy.
Right.
So I'm. It's not from the sense that I'm unappreciative of everything they've done, but frankly, I'm a little tired of relying on other people to, So I've come into this idea over the past couple of weeks that I'm just going to start from scratch, because I think that there's a lot of functionality that we should put into a tool, such as we should have the ability to run conversion within the program from ACIP Wiley. Either one, and convert between the two. We should also be able to convert from ACIP Wiley into Unicode, Uchin if we need. We should be able to do all this within a single program, and we shouldn't have to access different tools and different websites and worry if there's formatting problems or rendering problems or whatever. So I've kind of got a master list of things that I want to include, and that was one of them, man. That was definitely one of them. Is if you can build a bank that is dynamic in the system, in the sense that the database is constantly being updated.
Right. Yeah.
A centralized server that would have tags regarding who it came from. From what document it was from, frequency, all these things. But unfortunately, man, that's a project that
that's a big project.
That's going to take you know, and if I've got a couple other people helping, it'll still take a year, you know, to get like that's usable out, you know.
Yeah.
Well, then there's still the danger of people who really don't know Tibetan well, and I'm not saying I'm a person who knows it well, but like I've gone back and looked at how some people hypercontext things, and I don't agree with how it's done. You know, like it's clearly not associated correctly.
And we can't use that data. This data in this project, because Geshe, and I'll get off my soapbox here, and I just I just want to, and I'm sure you guys get this. I'm sure you understand this, but the understanding that I've gotten from what Geshe has told me personally is that he's been trying to get somebody to do what we're doing right now for upwards of 20 years,
right?
And that nobody has produced reliable results, right? So my approach to this is like the data that we're going to be using now. It has to be of the highest quality. It's got to be, every single thing we do has got to be thorough, and not from the sense that we're just using this as a means to learn Tibetan for ourselves, because if we do that, we'll get into the habit of doing brief one-to-one translations. So we need to get as thorough as we can regarding particle usage and grammatically speaking, like where punctuation follows. Like everything has to be very well documented, because this is all going to be archived. Right? Every single piece of information, and something that I've seen that has arisen from the ACIP project, from getting a little closer to it now, is I'm starting to realize how many mistakes there are in the data.
A lot.
So, and this wasn't something I understood before. You know, I kind of just had this like very romanticized version of like everything that came out of a data center. You know, I was like, it's so cool, it's been preserved, and it's beautiful. But unfortunately, there are still a ton of mistakes and correction work that has to be done with each document too.
You mean even just in the Wiley or in the translation?
Within the
Wiley.
in the Wiley, excuse me. From input error. And they had a system,
or carving error for that matter,
or a carving error. And these are going to be things that we're going to start to address if we implement a system like Jed was just kind of speaking on, in the sense that if we can start to generate some sort of a database where all this would be input, you've got this incredible ability with the state of processing power. Like computing power nowadays is to such that it's no big deal. You can do on the fly, like essentially error checking. The more data we get, the more reliable the fact checking or the error checking is going to be too. The quality control. So it's just like we're essentially building our own language model at that point.
So I think that when I was that I don't know, problem that I raised could be addressed by not updating the dictionary that the program uses, that HyperContext uses, until it's been checked by somebody. You know, like like Project Gutenberg has, for their editors, has like 5 layers of editing, and there's a quality control step at each point, and it could be the same thing, that at point X is when linked words will be added to the database, something like that, so that you don't get this really weird error.
Yeah, it seems like nothing in the database should be active unless it's committed, like somebody commits it.
It's got to be vetted in that sense, through a few people, which was the primary reason that I contacted Venerable Ningpo in the first place, because I want Geshe to have. I want us to be as independent from Geshe as possible with this. Not in the sense that I want to keep him out of it or anything, but just from the standpoint that he's got so much stuff that he's always starting new projects, and he's always doing things. So I want this to be our own baby, you know. In that sense, I want him to be happy with what it is that we're doing, though, as well. So, given that fact that he is, without a doubt, like the highest source of like the highest authority, I guess would be the best word for translation. You know, I'd like to run this all by him. You know, I'd like to have a document like hypertexted and say, here, Geshe, can you check this? You know, but I don't think it's going to happen. So that's actually a great question in the sense that, you know, can we come up with a group of people that we would each feel reliable with sending information and having them, you know, check it, kind of like authorities, you know?
Yeah, I like your idea of a hierarchy system. I think, you know, my kind of sense of it was that if you have people doing kind of the footwork on the ground level, and they might have mistakes, that, you know, people who have a better sense will at least be correcting errors and not so much of at least the ground level work. And so maybe people who are on the second tier, or how many of the tiers you want to have, they can both correct what they get from the ground level work and also correct each other, so there's multiple eyes looking at it. So that was kind of my sense, is that you'd have on the ground level people just doing the kind of bare bones, and then on the next tier you'd have people checking that and each other's work, because presumably they'll have less that they have to do if they're just checking rather than hypercontexting from scratch.
Well, they can be working on the next work, you know?
Right.
Like, let's say, you know, for a preliminary basis, we all agree to use the 5 great books from the Geshe study, you know? So we want to start hypertexting first off, you know, the Abhidharma, right? Then we're going to move on to Madhyamakavatara, yeah? As you're working with each one of these projects, each one of these books becomes its own project at that point. Now, you know, do you work with individual sections or whatnot? But the idea that I'm passing here, and I got to say hats off to Venerable Upala, in the sense that I think it's a great idea, and I was very happy when you offered that, because from my perspective, it was a management nightmare. It's not like we're asking people. It's not like I'm a contractor overseeing the building of a house. This is all abstract data, and it's all. I mean, I think we can all agree that this is the most holy, like, information that we could be preserving. So on that level, it's like, you know, I was like very hesitant to even say that I was capable of doing it in a thorough manner, you know, because there's all these questions that come into play, all the things that we've explored so far during this call, you know. But I got to say, I think the hierarchy thing works. It's multifunctional in that sense that it provides a layer of quality control, but we also don't get bogged down necessarily on working with one section of the Abhidharma, you know. While one level of the hierarchy is and, you know, enacting their quality control necessarily, the people who are doing the first run through, you know, can be working on the next section. So everybody's always busy, and there's always work being produced, you know.
Yeah.
So there's never this stagnant kind of feeling like I've gotten from the project over the past four months, you know. In the sense that we'll always have something to do, and it's not necessarily like we're all going to be bogged down, but whenever you feel like you have time that you can offer to the project, you know what you should be doing, and you can go to it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important for the people who are the more senior translators, though, to I think also to be checking each other, because I just think it's important that it doesn't just pyramid, because anybody and everybody's going to make mistakes, even, you know, no matter how well you know it. So it's good that there's some lateral checking at some level.
Yeah.
And don't they do that in the ACIP input centers? Isn't that what, like, I'm trying to think back when Dan Stivers was talking about, or maybe it was Aaron talking about the new quality control measures that they were thinking about adding and increasing their quality and having peer review?
Yeah, well, the current system it's fivefold. So there are 5 different people who input it, right? You see? And Then you compare. So each document is entered 5 times. Then hold on. Each document's entered 3 times, I think. And then what you do is you do a comparative between the two at the end. So you have 2 different people who compare each of the input.
Wow.
So it's 5-fold in that sense. Which
That's interesting.
I don't understand how mistakes can make that, can make it through, to be quite honest, if you've got that many people on it. Right?
But I think Dan was introducing a different way, right? Wasn't
yeah, but I don't think that's not going to be implemented anytime soon.
Oh. Okay.
So, Jed,
I mean, as a model for us.
Oh yeah. You know what? I think I recorded that meeting.
I have some
I'll have
notes
to get back. Yeah, if you've got notes, maybe pull them up and see if you can locate the section where they're talking about that new system of quality control that they were trying to introduce. I definitely need to start exploring different ways of doing that, and that's something I'm just going to have to spend some grunt work on, like some grunt work time, Googling and seeing what different projects have used for different things, but I that's the biggest thing, because I found a mistake in what I had done just yesterday. After spending hours and hours and hours and hours with the text and going over and over it again regarding Tzul, and I saw your note about the last that last entry into the glossary.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another grammatical function. Geshe-la was using Tzul. So Tzul is usually like way or manner or method, separate from tekpa in the sense that it's more so the joie de vivre that something is done with, if it's done with it, you kind of get the. I think that the feeling for Tzul is different in the sense that it's not like vehicle, like way, but more the manner in which you do something. And he said, because I was going to leave it as Tzul was going to be translated as way for that last paragraph, but he said, he said if you want me to blow your mind, I'll tell you like what it really means, and he said it's the S on like this word. It's the S on method or ways. I can't remember. I'll have to look here. Let me see.
Like a pluralizer, you mean?
Yeah, now I'm curious.
It's he said it was actually the so he was using it in the sense that the S was referential to something that had been done in the past tense. So the way that in Tibetan, it's almost, instead of like a period for a sentence, it becomes a tensor for like the entire block of script. You see, so it was more so saying like. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, right.
You miss stuff like this, like, and I don't think anybody, I mean, Venerable Ningpo or anybody else would really catch that unless they've spent 25 years, like,
yeah,
at monastery. I'm going to pull it up though, right here, just so I can be a little bit more thorough with you guys. I don't want to tell you any. Let me find it. Okay, so it is. It's grants. It's the S on grants.
Grants.
Yeah, it's so.
So it's it provides the tense, right?
There is a. So you can start to see how it's like this past like this like past present like tensizer almost on the I can't find the exact grammatical term to explain it, but I'm more so not trying to confuse you guys. I'm just like saying like this is an error that I kind of forgot. Like it was a mistake that I didn't see until I started revisiting the material again.
Is this in Jay Rinpoche's bio, or I'm just kind of curious now. I wanna know.
Yeah. I'll pull up the document and I'll tell you exactly what verse it's in. Just one second.
Oh, because I remember seeing this soul that I didn't know how to translate.
There's a soul and then there's sul. So it's sul, which
Sashafku Susla Sul.
Yeah. Well, no, there is but there is the word preceding it is gao sa not a soul. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to find the verse, but
grant him the name. Yeah.
So I guess you just found it.
Yeah, no, I did. Asked, interesting. Yeah, and I think it says asked or this is interesting. Sen. Oh, is it a verbalizer? It looks like maybe it's a verbalizer.
In the sense that it's like, maybe that is the word I was looking for. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, because it looks like it's turning sen into a good. Sen is normally just the honorific for name, right? But if maybe he's saying that soul is a verbalizer, it's like turning that into a verb, which is
grants.
But I don't know.
Well, I thought I added it in one of my documents. So I changed. I actually added the tag to one of the documents that I have, Apple Data, but I found just now that it's not in this one. So as you can see, there are small things like that we'll all just have to pay attention to. Now, I don't want to take up too much more of you guys' time. I mean, we've been actively on here an hour, and I could sit and talk about. I mean, hell, this is my life. I talk about this. I love it. But at the same time, I think there may be a lot that we've already kind of gone over too. So. In the future, if we do these, I'd like to get in the habit of doing these more often, and maybe we can start to pull other people. We'll be able to get more than 2 out of 15 people to join in. So over time, I'm hoping we can do this a little more often, and that in the future we can keep anything like this down to 30 minutes. Just so we're not overloading people, and you don't have to set aside your whole afternoon just hypertexting. So I think in the future maybe just keep that in mind. I don't want to get you guys to a point where you dread having to sit down for one of these things.
No.
But, I think we've got enough to work with for now, and maybe over the next week or two. Either look for an email or I'll try to set up another one of these calls, because I feel like it was really productive in that sense.
Yeah, totally.
Good.
Okay. Just a thought too. I think there's a balance too in terms of, I think we all want to really preserve things and translate stuff well, but I think it's always going to be an imperfect translation, just because of the difference of the language. Tibetans just have a whole different way of thinking.
That's true.
In terms of language than we do, and a lot of the things we translate are always approximations.
That's very true.
Like one of the things that we were studying this month, how we Tateba, what we call transitive and intransitive if we translate from the Tibetan is really not what they mean. It's a whole different understanding of
it's
actions.
an English concept. It's an English grammar concept that we're trying to
Right.
box Tibetan into.
Right, right. And it's like I think, you know, I think we need to find the middle way between doing a just translation, but there's going to be certain nuances that just might stay ambiguous, and we shouldn't get too hypersensitive to those ambiguities and let that stall out our progress. You know what I mean?
That's a good balance, definitely.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's something that Google has to figure out, not us.
Yeah.
I mean, really, for their purposes, for Geshe-la's purposes, one of them is to help people learn Tibetan,
Yeah.
and to keep the language alive. And so we do have to think about it at some point.
Well, I don't know if you guys heard in the videos, the point of the hypertexting well, it's multifunctional. You know, there are many different things that the project's going to see. There are many different fruits which are going to come from everything that we're doing right now. One of them is generating a new dictionary, either an online or hard copy, both. I don't know quite yet. But when I'm talking with him, you know, he'll keep saying, like, you know, when you're making the dictionary, like, keep this in mind, or you'll do it this way, and then people 50 years from now will be wondering why in the hell you did it that way, and they'll be calling you a dumbass, but he'll say, rest assured that you did it correctly, you know?
Yeah.
That was one of the things that he said preceding what he said about Sul, right? Was, you know, in 20 years from now, someone is going to look at what you're doing with this word right now and totally think that you were way off, and totally think that you were, like, you know, some space cadet who decided to, like, translate the Tibetan scripture, right? But he said, you know, that's something for them to figure out, kind of just like what you said about Google, in that sense that, like, we have to be as thorough as possible, I think. But Jed, what you're saying too about being, you know, open to the fact that, like, the two languages from a conceptual standpoint are just so different that everything's not going to fit this predefined box that I want to put it into.
Right.
It's just the way my mind works. You know, I'm like, well, now I've got to go back and look at, like, every S in every paragraph, you know, and, like, figure out, like, why and, like, and what was going on. And I think if that happens, if that starts to happen, we won't produce much work.
Yeah.
You know.
Speaking of every S, you know, many words have many different meanings, not only in different contexts, which, I don't know, it seems to me like there should be a you know, Tibetan dictionary for when you're talking about sutra, or when you're talking about logic, or when you're talking about tantra, or when you're talking about Vinaya. You know, they have different uses of the words, but even within each category, words can be used differently. And we've got some examples in our little spreadsheet, which only has, you know, 150 some words. So how do we put those together so that when Google goes and looks up just, you know, apostrophe E, or I mean A-E, they find the different ways it's been translated rather than, you know, 10 entries?
Yeah. I have no idea.
I think the only way, it seems like all they can do is offer all the possible definitions.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe
how do we give it to them? How do they want it from us?
Oh,
that's
the
my
format.
question. Yeah.
Well, because you've got like because you've got particles which function in so many different ways within the language.
Right.
But how are they going to pull from our data the fact that, you know, the raw like suffix on a word is a comma. You know, they, I really I don't know, and that's one of those things that like I'm glad you asked because I've been sitting with that for months now. You know,
So maybe just go back and ask Google. Say that it's a very contextual language, and how do we present to you in a way that you can then use?
Mm-hmm.
What works best for you? And then we can try and figure out how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tibetan is such and this I think this gets into more of a philosophical like discussion about language here, in that like the Tibetan language being so different from any other language they're likely to work with. I think it's unique in the sense that they may have to like break the mold. Tibetan may like change the way that they start to look at any other language that comes to them. I don't know. I really don't know how they're going to address it. And I don't even know if they're going to like. You see here. Okay, here's something I've been thinking about. Geshe-la said at one point, if you send this, we were translating something, and he said, if you were to send this to Sonam, she would say it was incorrect. Much so like the guy who's going to be looking at my work or our work in 20 years. He was like she'd say you had done it incorrectly, and based on that one mistake that she sees in the first verse, she's going to tell the other people that work at in the translate department that your work is unreliable, in the sense that she found 3 different mistakes in your work. So I've kind of been operating under this like position that we have to really have our motivation as high as possible, and I'm just hoping that my virtue like somehow like sees it through, because I on so many different levels. I mean, we've talked about 2 major ones. Like how much data do they need? And we may not have it, and our entire canon that we have, ACIP's entire English like translated canon, it doesn't necessarily fit the mold that they would need to work with. 3, given that, who do we expect? Who is going to be looking at this freaking data? And I'm almost certain they don't have a textual Tibetan scholar looking at this stuff.
Right.
So these are all questions that I've been thinking about. I've been sitting with, and to be quite honest, I've spent mornings meditating on them and asking for inspiration, like asking for blessings. And it's basically just coming down to the point of just get them data and hope that it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these things can be transparent too. I mean, I don't think they necessarily have to be mysteries with Google. I mean, we can, especially, I mean, we can talk about how, like, a lot of these translations make sense in a Dharmic context, and they might seem incorrect from other perspectives. And, how do you want us to? I mean, it seems like a lot of what we're talking about is we have to get clear about where did the long-term scope of ACIP and this hypercontexting for us, where does that converge and diverge with Google? And I think the more we get clear on that, it's going to inform a lot of these things, both about our method of translating and how we hypercontext, and also what material we use. But I think it sounds like a lot what I'm hearing over and over. We just need more information from them, and kind of have and let them know, just because Sonam is Tibetan. I mean, I don't know anything about Sonam, but that doesn't. You're right. Like, that doesn't mean she's an expert in all these different fields.
Yeah.
about what translation of Tibetan entails. So I think we need to. I think we just need to make them clear of these questions that we're having and the reasons, and just be transparent about that. I don't think we have to guess or make any assumptions.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah, we're gonna. That's a good point. I'll send him an email. I'll get something out to him and ask him. Yeah, we'll just have to see where it goes from there, I think.
Yeah.
And let you guys know as soon as I hear something back from him. So if we've got a list of things that we need to ask Google, I'm just going to make a short list here. So maybe file format.
Yeah, how much data?
Yeah, much.
And then also we're mainly in the vein of preserving Dharmic texts. Are they looking for data on colloquial texts? And
they're not. They're not looking for literary. They're looking for strictly colloquial, and that was one of the things they told us in the meeting. So I mean, since my teacher asked me to do this, and from his lips, like he told me, like they're looking for colloquial. Hold on, guys. The internet connection might drop here. I'm on a DSL line, and sometimes the phone will actually cause this asynchronous drop. So if I cut out, I'll be right back on.
Okay.
But one of the things they told us in the meeting itself was they're just looking for colloquial. And given the fact that my teacher asked me to go ahead with it anyway, working with his translations, we've kind of been looking for ways to just crowbar in our information in the sense that we've been looking for stuff that has a blending of this colloquial feel. And we spent a few weeks, I think, narrowing it down to Namdolak from a selection of stuff that Venerable Upala had compiled. So after all that, maybe a month and a half ago, Geshe Michael told me to work with this. He said use King of the Dharma.
I see.
So all the stuff that we've, like, I don't know, and I'll give you my personal kind of feeling here is that I don't think it's going to go very far. That's not gonna that's not gonna deter how much I try to make it happen. And I don't want to discourage you guys either from helping, but it seems like there are so many things that are kind of working against us on this one. That I think on that level, they could pay somebody, like, so let's say we chose to go ahead with the Radio Free America thing, like to try to intermingle these classical translations with a modern literary feel. We'll send them one thing from like RFA, a packet of data from their stuff, and then the next one will be whatever, Ari Davis 400 verses or something. Like I don't quite know, but I'm.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like from my standpoint, I hate to say this, but I'm much less interested in hypertexting a colloquial Tibetan dictionary than I am in preserving the Dharma, right?
Yeah, that's the truth.
I understand the facility of it, but like from my time, not so much.
Yeah. No, it's all precious, you know. Yeah, every second's precious. Yeah, I get that.
Well, you know, yeah, maybe that's. I mean, in terms of Google, then I mean, I think there's a few strategies. We could just do what we're doing, and you know, if they decide it's not really what they want, we leave it to them to say that, or we address the problem with them and we say why we think it's a good idea. I mean,
yeah.
frankly, I think most of the people who are English speakers who are interested in Tibetan are interested in Dharma. I don't think you're going to get the people.
Yeah, there's not going to be the one person who speaks perfect colloquial but has no vetted interest in Dharma.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like most English speakers, they're going to want to be able to translate Dharmic phrases. I mean, it's very few English speakers who are just interested in Tibetan for cultural sake. So we could just ignore it and just kind of give them what we're giving them, and you know they can decide if it doesn't suit their needs and cross that bridge when we come to it, or you know we could confront it and say, we know you're looking for colloquial, but this is why we think these these Dharmic texts are going to be important resources for you. But that's a judgment call. I don't.
Well, the first option has kind of been the way that I've been approaching it. Is
right.
I'm just going to send them, and then they can use it or they cannot. You know.
Right.
Right. So I don't quite know. Like at this point, that's kind of the point that that's the way I've been operating. But also at this time, I just want to send it to them now. You know, because there are like the project that the hypertexting project itself has been at a standstill because I've been so freaking like concerned with getting them something they can work with.
Right.
So it's kind of like at this point I just want to move on. I just want to I want to start our real work. You know. And I don't know if that makes like total sense or not. Like, but I don't want to spend too much time like flirting with Google, you know?
Yeah.
I either want to marry her or like we need to so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a vision question. I mean, I think maybe this is something to get clarification from Geshe-la. It's like, you know, what are we willing to compromise to kind of be sexy to Google, and where are the limits there? You know what I mean? Like, maybe RFA is a bad idea because it's too much of a digression from what ACIP's main goal is, and you know, like what are we willing to kind of like? What are we willing to kind of change our direction, you know, temporarily in order to suit their needs? You know, I don't know. So, and then once we're clear on that, then we know, you know, either, you know, what I think when those things are solidified, I think it's like this is in two stages. One, getting clarification on what they need. Two, getting clarification on what we're doing, and then three, then you know how to move forward. I think that'll answer a lot of these kind of ambiguities we're having.
Well, another aside here, and this is very on point. I'm not going off on a tangent for no reason, but a bigger, from a larger perspective, Geshe Michael was wanting to use this entire Google Translate thing as a means for getting our foot in the door with Google Books, so that we can see everything preserved. Through Google Books, which is one of the things that we talked very deeply about in that meeting with Cram and Stivers, Venerable, remember?
Yeah.
So on that level, you know, I don't want to burn any bridges in the sense that I don't want them to think that we're, you know, because if they Google ACI, like they'll see a whole bunch of different stuff, you know. Yeah. They could see like poor articles. They could see articles that are written from a very you know, a very good perspective from that sense. Like, but I want our work to speak for itself in the sense that, you know, we should be easy to work with because there are bigger pictures than just what we're doing right now with Google. Obviously, they're a huge corporation, and they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
It's very evident that the face of business and corporations, they are born and they die just like anything else. You know, from a majority of corporations will eventually see their end in a relatively short amount of time. But I think Google is an anomaly in that sense, that it's an entity which is going to be around for a while, given the amount of like pots that they've got their hand into. They are thoroughly putting a Google stamp on damn near everything that exists in this world. So from that standpoint, you know, this is kind of just our foot in the door, right? So I'm hesitant, like, to just, you know, put a nice little bow on a book and send it to them and say, here you go. Like, I think what we've come up with today is definitely just send them an email, be as transparent as possible in the sense that letting them know what we have and what we might not have that they're looking for. And then the ball's kind of in their court, but at least they know that we're easy to work with and that we're also thorough in the sense that we'll provide what they need, not necessarily try to crowbar in our own information. You know? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, it's kind of like also, but, you know, regardless, it's like if, you know, it's what you're willing to compromise and what you're not, you know, so it's like if they want something in particular and this is what they're asking for and we can't, and it just doesn't match up what we're trying to do, then it's like, you know, whatever repercussions we have with Google, it's, you know, it's like, well, we're not willing to go there. So it's like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, because you're right, but it's like, you know, we could do a lot to get in with Google, but then who are we becoming by doing that? You know, it's like if it's too far off from what our mission is in the statement, then who cares if we get in with Google? You know, we could get in as a Tibetan resource, but then we've completely lost the project of, you know, preserving the Dharma. So,
I mean, strictly from the viewpoint of highest worldview, it doesn't matter what we send them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I mean, it's kind of the whole, like, that's kind of been the predetermining factor behind my entire view with it. It's like I've put in the work. I think you guys have put in, you know, as much time as I've asked you to. So it's like, it's kind of, you know, whether or not our virtue will allow it to happen.
Yeah.
But at this point, I can't sit on the egg anymore, you know? Like, I mean, I think there's other things, there's other higher, like, reasons that we've all come together as a group. And other things that we should be doing. So...
yeah, we just put it out there and let it flower, you know.
That's essentially it. Like, I get into this whole. It's a very schizophrenic thing that happens in my mind. I'm like, well, you know, I should like be doing this, or should I like start doing this, or should we format it this way? And like, I think these are all good things to think about. And they're definitely, we can't just send them a bunch of slop, you know. But there's only so far you can take it. Because you could sit there forever and literally forever and you know, trying to like force everything to conventionally like work. So I gotta say, I thank you guys so for, I mean, you've given me an hour and a half of your time to just kind of talk and brainstorm. And level-headed opinions too. There's nothing that's been like way out. Like everything's been very applicable and very, very practical. So that's kind of what
I think we should just, you know, military style, just take over Google and, you know, force them.
Watch out, man! They're listening right now.
Oh shoot, that's right. Darn.
that keyword just got doxed.
Oh, shoot.
Like, they're
I'm on
gonna
the list.
show up at your house.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm on the list. Oh well. What can you do?
We'll just say, yeah. You know what? You guys have the link to the Dropbox folder. I think maybe something we can do over the next few days, whenever you guys get a chance, is pull up that Google Drive folder that I shared with you. That's got every file that I've put into consideration for sending to them. So it's just the sample data in different forms, you know.
Okay.
Some files are hypertexted, some files aren't hypertexted. Some are in Wiley, some are in ACIP Wiley. So just look at those, and maybe I think it would be good to just look for any mistakes that may have been in there too. As far as what I can tell, though, it's there was that tag I was talking about tool is in one of the documents, but it's not in another one. So maybe if we could all do some comparative stuff between the documents, just to make sure that they're all mirroring each other. And then after I hear back from them, we'll send it off, and that'll be the end of that. So, okay, cool. Well, I appreciate you guys joining in.
Well, thanks for taking this on, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for
really
all the
good.
hard work you're doing. It's great.
It's selfish, man. I need it, man. Yeah, it's a very holy project.
Give it away.
Yeah.
Give it away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need it so that I can give it away. So cool. All right, guys. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Venerable.
Oh, nice to meet you, Jed.
Nice to meet you too.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye,
Okay.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.